Chapter 182 Fireworks 2. Fireworks. Is it the kind of colorful fireworks? Zhou asked curiously. No, it's just the kind made of gunpowder and will be shot in different shapes. There's a grape shape, cranes, rats, and many other things. I even heard that the cranes will be in a flying form. Gu Wen said so excitedly. Really? Zhou Ying's interest was also piqued when she heard this, as expected of a fireworks festival. It's true. There are rat-shaped fireworks because this is the year of the rat, and it follows the 12 zodiacs and is different every year. A local shop assistant, Zhang Dake, replied. How about this? Whoever has seen it before will give up their spots for the others to go, and they must come back early. Zhou looked at Gu Wen's expectant eyes and finally nodded in agreement. Thank you, mistress. We'll be back after watching the fireworks. Gu Wen turned around and ran after that. Fang Qing and Gu Wu immediately followed. In the end, even Zhao Xing's family of 3 followed suit. Zhou looked at Zhao Qing, Chun Nyang, and Qiu Nyang. You guys aren't going. Maybe next year, the kitchen can't be left empty. Zhao Qing said, shaking his head. Besides, they could also see the fireworks from the 2nd floor, and there was no need to join the crowd. Alright, then we'll take turns next year. Just as Zhou finished speaking, Gu Qingrui walked over. Babe, I heard that the fireworks tonight will be beautiful. Let's go and take a look. Without waiting for her to speak, Sun Hongliang replied, You guys go ahead. There aren't many customers now, so just a few of us will do. Sorry for the trouble. Zhou apologized and went to the back. She changed out of her work uniform and took out a large bag of tear-inducing powder mixed with devil's pepper and mustard from her interspace. Keep this well, she said as she handed it to Sun Hongliang. Although it's not straight-up poison, it might as well be. Remember, you all are the most important. If we lose these objects, we can always repurchase them. Don't worry, mistress. We will definitely protect the restaurant. Zhang Dake's nose twitched. He had only heard of servants sacrificing their lives to protect their master's goods and never heard of the master sacrificing their interests to protect a servant's life. This made him touched. The others quickly chimed in. All right, well go now. We'll bring you gifts when we come back. Zhou said her farewell and left the restaurant with Gu Qingrui. At that moment, Gu Qingrui thought of the packet of tear-inducing powder and held her hand to ask, Did something happen? Just in case. I hope you're making a mountain out of a molehill, said Zhou. She told him about her encounter with the thief today and the town's refugees. Gu Qingrui nodded in agreement. That's good. With so many people gathered in the town, some petty thieves will inevitably be around. However, I heard that County Mayor Kong has also brought the garrison here. There should be no problem with safety. I see. It's good that there won't be any major trouble. Zhou replied, and the two looked around the roadside stalls. There was a variety of food, especially snacks. There were fried cakes, radish cakes, vegetable bowls, and so on. However, they only focused on handicrafts. Each bought a lantern with a mouse pattern. They saw a doll, the kind with embroidery. Gu Qingrui then bought Zhou a small pig doll with a curled tail based on her zodiac sign. This is for you. Thank you, Zhou took it with a smile and thanked him. She wanted to kiss him, but after looking around, she didn't continue. Zhou and her husband went to a stand and asked the owner to make a pair of clay figurines according to their appearance. Qingrui, 3rd sister-in-law. I see you two have also come to get a clay figurine made. Gu Qingxi walked over and greeted her with a smile. Chapter 183 Fireworks 3. Gu Qingrui turned his head and saw that he was alone, so he asked, did you come on your own? Yes, we're setting up a stall in front of the shop today and selling millet cakes. Gu Qingxi pointed at a stall not far away. Gu Qingrui turned his head and saw his second uncle Gu standing in front of their shop. He was guarding the stall, and there were many customers there. But thinking about it, it made sense. Most of the people who came to see the fireworks were from low-income families. A piece of cake would be enough to fill their stomachs. Do you want to come with us? Gu Qingrui asked. Can I? Gu Qingxi asked expectantly. Of course, as long as you don't run around. You guys wait for a minute, I'll go and inform my father. Upon hearing this, Gu Qingxi immediately turned around and ran back as if he were afraid that Gu Qingrui would go back on his words. When he came back, their clay figurine had already been made. Zhou Ying saw that it looked pretty similar to her, so she asked the stall owner to make another one for Gu Qingxi. After it was done, Gu Qingrui held one figurine in each hand and walked toward the river. When they arrived, they found that it was already crowded. Fortunately, a row of lanterns was hanging by the river, which lit up the riverbank, so the people were still standing around orderly, and there was no chaos. At the same time, through the conversations of the people, they learned that County Mayor Kong and a group of officials had already returned after paying their respects to the river god. Just as the three of them were looking forward to the fireworks, the sound of gongs and drums suddenly rang out. The crowd erupted in applause as a group of lion dancers emerged from a warehouse near the dock and walked up the river bank. The crowd naturally followed, and Zhou Ying's group of three naturally did not fall behind. The lively lion dance was fun to watch. One moment it was walking near the table, and the next moment it jumped on it nimbly, attracting a burst of applause. When they reached a riverbank outside the town, the lion dance stopped. As soon as they left, everyone saw the row of fireworks prepared by the river. Qingrui, what do you think this kind of fireworks will look like? Gu Qingxi asked curiously. I'm not sure, but judging from the exquisite workmanship, it should be quite good. Gu Qingrui shook his head. To be honest, I thought the 15th day would be a lantern festival, where people would guess riddles and play with lanterns. I never expected this festival to be so grand. Zhou Ying said expectantly. Don't you always guess riddles on the 15th in the capital? I'm already tired of it, and it's not fun at all. Gu Qingxi shook his head. This is a local custom, and each place has its own customs and traditions. That's why it's better to travel and see it for yourself instead of just hearing about it. Only after experiencing it personally can you understand the fun. Gu Qingrui reminded her. At that moment, a commotion suddenly broke out in the crowd. Then, a group of soldiers ran in and drove the crowd 1 mile away from the fireworks. It seems like it's about to start. Let's stand back a little. After Gu Qingrui finished speaking, he led them and retreated. This was because gunpowder wasn't something that humans could entirely control in ancient times. The slightest error would cause it to deviate from its intended path, which would be problematic if they were injured. Thus, the three retreated all the way to a pile of ruins far from the river bank. After that, the three simply stood on top of the ruins. Not only could they see the entire scenery from here, but there weren't many people either. Soon, as the gongs and drums sounded, sky lanterns flew into the sky, lighting up the dark night. The first rack of fireworks was lit up when the lanterns were almost gone. As the fluorescent yellow fireball fell to the ground, the fireworks started emitting a blue light, which looked stunning in the night. Chapter 184 Rushed. The following fireworks were in the shape of a crowned crane. Before it was ignited, the red-crowned crane looked elegant, its white feathers fluttering in the wind as if it were about to ascend to the immortal world. After it was lit, with a melodic sizzling sound, oval-shaped eggs fell from the crane's tail and exploded into a ball of fire in midair. It really looked like it was laying eggs. What a spectacular scene. In the end, the crowned crane soared into the sky and burned brightly in the night. Next was a fish, and finally, a rat. When the final rat-shaped firework was released, the people were still unsatisfied. At that moment, a scream suddenly rang out. It was unknown what the scream was about, but soon there was a commotion, which finally turned into chaos. After a while, the three discovered that someone had lost a child, and someone else shouted that they had also lost a girl. "Let's go back to the restaurant," Gu Qingrui said. "I'm afraid we won't be able to go home today." "Why?" Gu Qingxi asked in confusion. "Because so many children have gone missing, the authorities will definitely lock down the town for an inspection. Or rather, they have already locked it down, so we can't go home," Shouing said. "Oh, then where are we going to stay? These human traffickers really deserve to die." Gu Qingxi said it gloomily. "You go back to your snack shop. If you don't have a place to stay, you can come to our place and squeeze in with the others," Gu Qingrui said. "Thank you for taking me in, third brother." Gu Qingxi immediately grabbed his arm and said. Gu Qingrui smiled and didn't say anything else as the three hurried back. When they passed the snack shop, they realized it was locked. They didn't know if the others had gone to watch the fireworks or if they had gone home, so they brought Gu Qingxi back to the restaurant. Sun Hongliang, who was settling the accounts, saw them come in and asked, "Mistress, why have you all come back this fast? Have the others returned yet?" Shouing asked. "Not yet, but it should be soon. Something happened over there. I heard that some people lost their children. If you're done recording the accounts, you can go back first, and well stay here tonight." Sun Hongliang was stunned for a moment. Thinking of his family, he nodded. "Then I'll go back first and come back early tomorrow." After he finished, he put a sheet of paper into the account book, closed it, and locked it in the drawer with the bookmark. After he left, Zhouing also allowed Zhang De and the others to return and closed up shop. As for the group of little beggars, she didn't let them go. First, it was so she could keep an eye on them, as it wasn't safe for them to go back now. Therefore, they were gathered in the central room in the backyard. They laid out a few straw mats and a few blankets so the children could sleep in the room for the night. As for Gu Qingxi, it was arranged for him to sleep with Zhao Xing. Soon, Gu Wen and the other two ran in, talking and laughing. However, after waiting a long time, Li Xing's family of three did not appear. Zhouing suddenly felt a little uneasy, afraid that something would happen to Li Yu. Fortunately, the family of three finally came back around midnight. "What's the matter with you guys?" Zhouing asked hurriedly. "Why are you back so late?" After the fireworks, they discovered human traffickers. The officers immediately sealed off the scene and checked everyone one by one. "We were delayed when we were queuing," Li Xing said with a fearful expression. He hugged Li Yu tightly after he finished speaking. "I see, you guys should go to bed early." Zhouing comforted them and told the family of three to go home. After they left, Gu Qingrui turned his head and said, "Babe, you should go to sleep too. It'll be fine here." "That's right. Sister-in-law, you should go to sleep. Brother Gu and I will take care of things here." Tian Jiawang walked over and said. Chapter 185 Seedling. "All right, remember to call me if you need anything," Zhouing told them. She turned around and took a pot of coals back to the main room. The night passed peacefully. The next morning, everyone got up and went to do their own thing. After breakfast, when Sun Hongliang and the others came to work, everyone discovered that the officers had investigated the entire night and caught a small group of human traffickers in a yard in town early in the morning. They also heard that several villages had reported that someone had stolen food from their village. Therefore, the entire town was in a mess now. Officers and soldiers searched everywhere. As a result, business was low throughout the day. During the inspection in the morning, they treated 2 soldiers to a meal. Fortunately, the soldiers were tight on time and only had a bowl of beef noodles each before they left. In the evening, when Zhou Ying and the other 3 went back on the donkey cart, they learned from Qian Zhuang and Gu Hanjiang that every village was guarding strictly against strangers. If it weren't for the fact that they were used to wandering around this area, they wouldn't be able to enter the village, let alone collect vegetables. Miss, Qian Zhuang said after he finished complaining, the vegetables in each village are almost all harvested, and it won't be easy to buy more of them in the future. I see, but I guess it's normal since there's a food shortage. You guys should go to the different villages and look since we can't do business if we don't have produce. We will try that then. I just don't know if they'll sell it to us. You can ask around. You can tell me if you find any, but they aren't willing to sell. I can talk to them about it. Alright, leave this to us brothers. When Qian Zhuang heard that he only needed to ask for information, he immediately patted his chest. Yes. By the way, starting next month, you will each be paid 500 coppers. Really? Thank you so much, miss. Gu Erjiang said with a smile. As long as you guys work hard, your salary will rise. Definitely, we'll definitely do a good job. The 2 of them nodded. It was challenging to get a long-term job in their village. Another main thing was that this work was easy and comfortable, so they didn't want to give up. Half a month later, the river was opened for business. Once the merchants arrived, the dock became lively, and of course, the business of all restaurants got better. At the same time, the land wasn't frozen solid anymore. Because of Gu Shengru's previous talk about growing chili, buying up barren land in the village became particularly popular. The Gu family alone bought 5 acres of it. When Zhou Ying saw this, she had to hurry up and water the land in her backyard. She found a plow and plowed about 80% of the land in the back. She also bought a tarp to build a simple, warm shed to grow chili seedlings. At the same time, she had planted 10 acres of chili seedlings on the manor's grassland. Of course, the dormitories she had promised Uncle Yen and the others had already started construction, all of which were made of real bricks. As a result, 12 long-term workers brought their wives and children to the manor to settle down. When the villagers learned that Zhou Ying had begun to grow seedlings, they began to speed up plowing their newly bought land. Chun Hong could finally go out after an entire month of rest. After a month of patient advice from Widow Hua, in addition to the fact that the Gu brothers had avoided her like the plague when she was in trouble. And later, she was also met with Gu Zixin's indifference, which made Chun Hong understand the reality of her situation. Even if she didn't mind being married into the Gu family, who were sinners in the capital, the Gu family wouldn't accept her. Thus, she gave up on the idea of entering the Gu family. Widow Hua went to the vegetable garden one day to do some gardening while Chun Hong had nothing to do. So, she thought of going to town to pick up some handiwork. Just as she left the embroidery workshop after taking a job, she was knocked out by a drug when passing by an alleyway. She was stuffed into a carriage and brought to a small courtyard. Chapter 186, she saw a chubby, middle-aged man standing before her when she woke up. She quickly stood up from the chair and demanded, "Who are you? Why did you capture me?" Chun Hong, who lives in Shanghe village and has a widowed mother. Previously, you were an assistant chef in a manor in Xiahe village. You were also the one who passed on Miss Chiao's message to Gu Qingrui. The man turned around and sat on the chair opposite her. You're manager Wang of the original Dongxin restaurant. Chun Hong sized him up and asked in disbelief. It seems that your memory is decent. Wang Quan nodded in satisfaction. Why did you bring me here? For my use. No, I refuse. Do you think you can refuse? Wang Quan sneered. When Chunhong heard this, she quickly looked around and saw two big men standing guard outside the door. She immediately asked softly, "What do you want me to do? You also know that Dongxin restaurant was originally mine. I just want to take it back." "But that's impossible. I heard that the Grassland Taste restaurant, like the Hongyun restaurant, is under General Zhou. Don't worry about that. If you want to live a good life, you better just listen to me. What do you want me to do? Get away to work inside Grassland Taste restaurant and get the recipe for the hot pot. Ultimately, make Gu Qingrui and Zhou fall out." Chunhong didn't understand what he meant at first, but she quickly realized that he was asking her to seduce Gu Qingrui. Thinking of Miss Chiao getting rejected and Zhou Ying's appearance, she shook her head. "I'm afraid it won't work. You'd better find a more beautiful woman to do it. This job is yours. As long as you follow my plan, I promise to make you the manager of Grassland Taste Restaurant." After Wang Quan finished speaking, he pulled her into the house. When Chunhong saw this, she immediately had a bad feeling in her heart. She immediately struggled and said, "I'll do it. I'll do it, all right. Just let me go." "How will you do what I say if I let you go?" Wang Quan laughed and pushed her onto the bed in his room, then ripped off her clothes and pounced on her. "Ah! No, no. Let me go. I beg you, let me go. I'll promise you anything." Chunhong shouted with distress. However, her cries for help were soon muffled. When she came out again, her hair was disheveled, her eyes were red and swollen, and there was even blood at the corner of her mouth. The clothes on her body were torn and tattered, and she looked like a rag doll that had been dismembered. Wang Quan, who was behind her, walked out in a refreshed manner. "Someone, help her wash up and get her a change of clothes." After he finished speaking, he left the room in big strides. Soon, two maids came in with a basin. They gave her a simple wash and changed her into a set of neat, coarse clothes. Then, they turned around and walked out. Chunhong returned to her senses, picked up her bag, and ran out. At that moment, Wang Quan stepped back in, and she was so frightened that she immediately retreated. Seeing this, Wang Quan stepped forward and pinched her little face with a smile. "Silly girl, I'm helping you here." Afterward, he pulled her to a chair and told her some things in a low voice. "After this matter is done, you will not be short of glory, splendor, wealth, or status." After hearing this, Chunhong only looked at him angrily and did not reply. "It's wrong of you to hate me. You should hate Gu Qingrui and his wife. Would you have to be in this state if it weren't for them? Remember, you don't have much time," Wang Quan threatened. "You have to hurry. Otherwise, you and your mother." At this point, a cold light flashed in Wang Quan's eyes, and he continued, "Don't play any tricks with me. From now on, you will always be under my surveillance." Chapter 187 Request, You. After hearing this, Chunhong gritted her teeth and looked at him angrily. You look so full of hatred. You should be redirecting that to Gu Qingrui and Zhou Ying." Wang Quan said as he stood up again. "Go. I don't care what method you use. Get into the Grassland Taste restaurant within 3 days, and they'll come to you." Looking at his shameless appearance, Chunhong wanted to tear him apart. However, on second thought, she realized that her situation was partly due to Gu Qingrui and his wife. Hence, she did not refute and instead got up and left. Seeing this, Wang Quan went out and sent a man to follow her. After leaving town, Chunhong realized that someone was following her. She quickly thought of what Wang Quan had said before, turning around to look. Sure enough, it was the person she had seen in the small courtyard. This person didn't avoid being seen at all, and he just followed her casually. She was shocked and scared, realizing that it seemed she could not escape. After Zhou and Gu Qingrui returned in the evening, they went to the backyard to check on the chili seedlings. After confirming that they had sprouted, the two finally breathed a sigh of relief. After dinner, Chunhong came to their door. Gu Qingrui looked at her awkward way of walking and frowned. "Miss Chunhong, you've sprained your leg again. You must be more careful, otherwise, it will leave behind problems in your leg if you do it too many times." Zhou glanced at her but soon found that her situation wasn't right. It didn't look like she had a sprained foot, instead, it looked like. Chunhong looked at the couple's puzzled eyes and was shocked. She had tried her best to cover it up and didn't expect them to see through it. She laughed dryly. "I'm sorry to have embarrassed myself in front of you, Dr. Gu. I didn't sprain my foot this time. It's just that I accidentally slipped and stretched my muscles. So, I wanted to get some medicine to relax my muscles and help my blood flow. I'll give you some safflower oil then. It's good and useful for your case." Gu Qingrui decided. He returned to the house and took out a small bottle of safflower oil, handing it to her. 5 coppers. "All right." Chunhong took it and gave him 5 coppers. However, she didn't have any intention of leaving. Instead, she looked at them hesitantly. "Is there anything else, Miss Chunhong?" Zhou asked. Chunhong pursed her lips and took a deep breath. "I don't know if your restaurant is still short of people, but I want to find a job. By the way, I used to work as a kitchen helper in the manor of Xiahe village. I can cook common noodle dishes and am good at chopping vegetables." Zhou felt strange. She had heard from her 6th aunt that Chunhong had been pestering Gu Qingya ever since she returned from the manor. Why did she suddenly want to work in a restaurant? She suddenly thought of the matter of Mrs. Lu asking them for the dessert recipe. Did this matter have anything to do with Mrs. Lu and her son? Thinking of this, she decided to be cautious and refused, saying, "I'm really sorry, but our restaurant doesn't need to recruit people at the moment. We'll talk about it in the future if there's an opportunity." When Chunhong heard this, she was stunned. However, when she thought of Wang Quan's threat, she could only brace herself and say, "I'm begging you. I don't ask for much. Even if I have to do odd jobs, I'm fine, but please just hire me." "But why do you have to enter our restaurant?" Zhou asked with a faint smile. Chunhong looked at Zhou Ying's suspicious eyes, and her heart trembled. Could it be that she had exposed herself? No way to calm down and deliberately held her breath. After her face turned red from the lack of oxygen, she said with a troubled expression, "You know my family situation. It's not easy to support ourselves, and we don't have much silver left. So I thought of saving up some dowry and then leaving some money for my mother's retirement." Chapter 188 Chili Seedlings. Zhou and Gu Qingrui looked at each other. In the end, Zhou still nodded with a troubled expression. "All right, you can come, but only to help clear the tables and do cleaning jobs. As for the monthly payment, it's 300 coppers." Of course, the reason she agreed so readily was not that they really pitied her. Although there were only a mother and daughter in their family, they had 5 acres of land. In addition, Widow Hua's needlework was spectacular, and she had always taken on a lot of work in the village or town. Chunhong's excuse wasn't valid at all. Instead, she felt that there must be something strange about her doing this, and it was better to keep her under their nose and see what she was up to. "Thank you, you too. Can I come to work the day after tomorrow? My legs are a little weak now." Chunhong asked with a smile. "Sure, but remember, you must be at the restaurant by noon. Otherwise, we'll have to dock your pay if you're late. We'll deduct 3 coppers for each time you're late, which is our restaurant's rule." Zhou reminded her. Chunhong was stunned for a moment as she did not expect there to be such a rule, but she still nodded and said, "All right, I'll remember that. You guys go ahead with your work, and I'll head back now." After saying that, she turned around and walked out. Seeing this, Zhou sent her out. Just as she was about to lock the door, the patriarch and the village chief came together. She hurriedly greeted them. "Grandpa village chief, uncle, please excuse me. I'll go make a pot of tea." "Oh, there's no need for that when it's so late. Well, leave after we ask you something." The patriarch quickly stopped her. "Uncle, you're here for the chili, right?" Gu Qingrui asked. "Yes, I wanted to ask you how many seeds you can give out. Now that the villagers' enthusiasm is high, the Qian clan also wants to plant them. I'm afraid you won't have enough seeds, which will disappoint everyone." The parrot nodded. "Indeed, this matter has to be settled in advance. Otherwise, good things may turn bad in the end." The village chief agreed. Gu Qingrui nodded in understanding. "I won't hide it from you. We have planted nearly 11 acres of chili seedlings, which will be enough for about 55 to 60 acres of land when they fully grow. I don't know how much land the village had cleaned up. As for the seeds, you can plant them on your own, just like how you usually plant vegetables, but you'll have to wait a little longer. Oh yeah, I wanted to ask why you had to cover the seedlings with a tarp. Can't you wait for the weather to be warmer before you grow the seedlings?" The village chief asked in confusion. Even the patriarch was curious. He had wanted to ask before, but the oil mill had been busy recently, so he had forgotten. Because there are many pests and diseases in the summer, the rain will also affect the chilies. We want to make them mature earlier to increase their production. Zhou explained. Even in modern times, pests and diseases were difficult to control. It was impossible to prevent all of them, so she didn't want to cause more trouble if she didn't prepare fully. The patriarch and the village chief were farmers, so they quickly understood what she meant. They looked at each other and said, "We understand. Well, go back and do the math now. It's been hard on all of you. The extra land can allow everyone to grow more vegetables, such as cabbage, lettuce, and so on. If you guys don't have seeds, it'll help you buy some back, and you all just have to provide the grown vegetables to the restaurant by then." Zhou stood up and said. "This is also a way to balance things out. Well, make the arrangements accordingly." The village chief nodded in agreement. After the two of them left, 2 more patients came to visit. After sending them off, the couple went straight into the interspace to work. Many crops had matured and were ready to be harvested. Chapter 189 Sun Liang. After the harvest, other than the 2,000 acres of wheat, the rest of the dry land was planted with sweet potatoes. Zhou also collected some peach flowers. She planned to wait for this year's coconuts, olives, and moon laurel to ripen and extract some oil to make some lipstick products for sale. In the blink of an eye, it was the day when Chunhong came to the restaurant. Zhou waited for her to show up and told Fang Qing and Chun Yang to keep an eye on her and try to understand her purpose for coming here. 2 days later, Zhou learned from Chun Yang that Chunhong had asked about the hot pot recipe more than once. But this was still in Zhou Ying's hands, and everyone told her that. After Zhou got the news, she guessed it probably wasn't Mrs. Liu and her son coercing Chunhong. Who could it be, then? She called Fang Qing over and said, "For the next 2 days, you and the little beggars will keep an eye on Chunhong and see who she will be in contact with. Remember, just keep an eye on them and don't take any risks. As for the rest, we'll discuss it after you come back and decide what to do." "I understand. Leave this matter to us." Fang Qing immediately went to find the little beggars to make arrangements. When Chunhong knew that the recipe was in Zhou Ying's hands and that the spices would be ground into powder every time, she knew it was impossible for her to steal the recipe. Therefore, after finishing her work at noon, Chun-Hong left the restaurant with the excuse that she needed to help Widow Hua buy some spools. Seeing this, Fong Qing immediately followed her. However, he soon realized that Chun-Hong was being watched. In order to prevent the other party from discovering him, he had to send a little beggar to follow her. The little beggar was brilliant. He didn't go alone but found a friend who was begging outside to follow him. His companion was young and dressed in beggar's clothes, and they followed Chun-Hong to a small courtyard without a hitch. He inquired around the courtyard before returning to Grassland Taste Restaurant through the back door and informing Fong Qing of the news. Then, Fong Qing led his friends to Zhou and told her about it. Sun Liang. Who is this person again? Zhou was confused after hearing that. No matter what, she still cooked a bowl of beef noodles for his friend and said, "Eat first, but you have to remember that you can't tell anyone about what happened today. Otherwise, it will put you in danger. Do you understand?" Manager Zhou, don't worry. We understand. His friend said with a smile as he chewed on the beef. Zhou looked at his lively eyes and said, "Little guy, how old are you? What's your name?" "My name is Xu Zi. I'm 7 years old today." "Don't worry, I'm very tight-lipped. I believe you. Hurry up and eat." Zhou reassured him and turned to the kitchen. She took out 2 pounds of rice and handed it to him, saying, "This is the reward for this mission." "Thank you, Manager Zhou." Xu Zi immediately stood up and bowed. Zhou smiled, pinched his little face, and then went to work. When they got home in the evening, Zhou told Gu Qingrui about the matter. "Rui, do you remember a person named Sun Liang?" "I don't have any impression of it." "I'll go back and ask to see who he is." "All right. It's fine if they only want to steal the recipe, but I'm afraid they'll use some dirty means." Gu Qingrui nodded thoughtfully and said, "Remind the people in the kitchen to oversee the ingredients. I'll find out as soon as possible." However, Zhou was still worried the next day after telling everyone the news. Finally, she simply installed a camera in a hidden corner and connected it to her mobile phone. This way, she could check it every day to prevent any accidents. On the other end, Chun-Hong knew that since it was not easy to get the prescription, she had to drive a wedge between the couple first. So the next day, she was thinking of ways to get close to Gu Qingrui, causing her to be distracted. Chapter 190 Responsibility befitting your position. So after Chun-Hong broke another small plate, Sun Hongliang walked over and asked, "Chun-Hong, can you keep up? If you can't, then leave as soon as possible. Look at how distracted you are today. You don't look like you're even trying to work. Manager Sun, please show mercy. I will definitely do my best, so please don't fire me." Chun-Hong hurriedly nodded and bowed. "I'll give you one last chance. If you screw up again, you'll be gone." Sun Hongliang paused and said, "By the way, I'll deduct the cost of this plate from your monthly salary." After saying that, he turned around and left. As for Chun-Hong, she bit her lip sadly. She thought of the people watching her outside, didn't refute, and obediently cleared the table. However, she was harboring hatred for Sun Hongliang inside her. It was just a plate, why did he have to make such a big deal out of it? Moreover, Zhou brought her here, but they didn't even give her special treatment. Thinking of this, a cold light flashed in her eyes. Since he started it, don't blame her for being heartless. Therefore, when they were resting after lunch, Chun-Hong deliberately went to Zhou Ying's room to complain about Sun Hongliang. She mainly complained that Sun Hongliang was disrespecting her. Zhou Ying had been in the society for a few years, so she knew that Chun-Hong was attempting to sow discord between them. She looked at her meaningfully and said, "When you were working at the Chow family's manor, were you also absent-minded from time to time? Do you not need to pay for the things you broke?" After Chunhong heard this, she raised her head and looked at her in surprise. Why was Zhou acting differently from what she had imagined? Zhou looked at her expression and sneered, "A country has its laws, and a family has its own rules. Manager's son is just following the management of our restaurant, otherwise, he would be punished. You should take a rest for now. Later, I will have manager's son read out the rules and regulations of the restaurant to you. You must firmly remember that if you commit the same mistake again in the future, I won't help you." "Yes, you'll go and rest." After hearing this, Chunhong walked out with a face full of unwillingness. At the same time, she also hated Zhou. "Leave the rest to me," Sun Hongliang heaved a sigh of relief. "How could I? You are just doing what you needed to do. Since I've given you the power, you have to take responsibility. Otherwise, the restaurant will be in chaos." "Yes, I'll do my best. I believe you. Keep an eye on her in the afternoon, as I plan to go to the manor after I'm done." Zhou then entered the kitchen. After finishing her work in the afternoon, she rushed back to the manor. When she arrived at the manor, she went straight to the chili field to look. Seeing that the plants were growing well, she was relieved. After that, she went to the dormitory area. She didn't expect that a row of brick houses had almost been finished building in less than 10 days, and the only thing missing was the roof. Uncle Yen, who had just come out of the sheepfold, saw her and immediately walked over with a smile. "Mistress, why are you here alone? I'm the only one who's free." "By the way," Zhou asked, "when is the roof for these houses going to be done?" "I was just about to tell you about this. I heard from the contractor that the day after tomorrow, at noon, you two must come." "Sure, it's going to be a big day." "Well, definitely come. By the way, how's the manor lately?" Chapter 191 Drought. "Pretty good, but it's a little dry. It's been half a year, and there's only been one small rain. We don't really have enough water." Uncle Yen shook his head. "The wheat has just been watered after the new year," he added. "I don't think it'll take more than 5 days to water them again." Zhou was shocked after hearing this. She had yet to pay attention to this before, and it seemed that she had to make preparations in advance. For some reason, she suddenly thought of the nightmares she had while living in the Mother God's temple. Was it an early warning for her? At this moment, Uncle Yen said, "The year of the ox and horse was good for farming. I was afraid of the 2 years of the rooster and monkey and didn't expect that we would survive these 2 years but struggle in the year of the rat." After Zhou heard this, she was stunned. She remembered that the year of the rat in the modern era wasn't good and took this hint seriously. After that, she chatted with the old man for a while and asked him to help keep an eye on the manor. Then, she turned around and went into the wheat field. The wheat had already turned green, but the seedlings weren't strong. The main issue was that the seedlings were sparse and even died in patches. Her expression immediately turned grave. After that, she turned around and went to the workshop. Zhou found Chang Shun and asked, "Uncle Chang, I saw that the wheat is dying in small patches. What's going on?" "It's dry, and the water can't reach higher places. I was thinking of planting some green vegetables in the next 2 days, and maybe at least we will have something to harvest." When Chang Shun said this, he sighed and continued, "Mistress, there hasn't been a single drop of rain. The wheat can only be watered with water from the river, and I'm afraid it will wither after some more time. No matter what, we must keep some of this season's wheat even if we break our backs. Otherwise, what are we going to eat? Don't you think so?" "That's for sure. I just hope it rains soon." After saying that, Chang Shun looked up at the huge sun in the sky. Why didn't he notice how annoying the sun was before? Seeing this, Zhou did not stay any longer. After greeting him goodbye, she went home and began to look for a water wheel drawing. If she could come up with the water wheel, the irrigation of the fields would save a lot of effort. In the evening, Gu Qingrui came back with Zhuang. Seeing that there was no smoke coming from the kitchen, he paused for a moment before tying Zhuang up and entering the house. He saw Zhou standing in front of the dining table and studying a drawing carefully. He walked over curiously, looked, and was surprised to find a water wheel drawing. He immediately thought of the dry weather and suddenly understood her intentions. Gu Qingrui turned around and went to the kitchen. However, there was nothing in the kitchen except some rice and noodles. He had no choice but to come back and ask, "Babe, I'll get you some vegetables." Zhou put down the drawing and said, "I'll go and cook while you study the drawing. Find fourth Grandpa Qian to try making one. If we don't think of a way to get the wheat fields in the manner to survive, I'm afraid we can't even keep the wheat seeds for next year. Alright, you can make something light for dinner. It's easy to get heaty now that the weather is dry." Gu Qingrui agreed, and he took the drawing to study it. After Zhou went to the kitchen, she cooked a pot of green bean porridge, 5 steamed buns, and then mixed cold side dishes made of silver ears, celery, and crisp lotus roots. She also fried a portion of bacon and some winter bamboo shoots. After the meal, Gu Qingrui took the drawing and looked for the patriarch, and the two went looking for the village chief together. They knew this was a good thing. If it came to fruition, the entire village could plant rice easily. As a result, the three did not waste time and went straight to find the fourth Grandpa Qian. Fourth Grandpa Qian also understood the importance of this matter. Since the village chief was here especially, he selected 2 people to focus on making the water wheel. Chapter 192 Fired on the morning of the 3rd day, after Zhou had prepared the base and dipping sauce for the hot pot in the restaurant, she had bought half a pig and 100 pounds of rice. After that, she rented an ox cart and rushed to the manor. However, the two didn't step forward to get involved when the roof was lifted. The owners of the houses then came forward to receive the gifts she had prepared for them. After they were done with their work, everyone had a good meal together. After the meal, the couple rushed back to town. "Babe, should we buy another cart?" Gu Qingrui asked when they were about to part. "It's troublesome to keep depending on one donkey cart." "True, then I'll buy the most ordinary-looking one. I don't want to be targeted by others." "I understand. I'll get an advance from the clinic." After Gu Qingrui finished speaking, he turned around and returned to his clinic. While there was no one in the kitchen, Zhou changed her phone and took it back to her room, where she looked through it carefully. As expected, when no one was around at noon, Chunhong went to the kitchen. She wrapped a small amount of each seasoning and quietly exited the kitchen. Zhou Ying's eyes narrowed when she saw this. It seemed that Chunhong was really here for the recipe. Unfortunately, she usually prepared the seasoning for the hot pot by herself and never put it in the kitchen, so no matter how much she took, she couldn't come up with the recipe for the hot pot base. However, she knew that Chunhong couldn't stay anymore. Otherwise, who knew what she would do next? So, before work began in the afternoon, Zhou took 100 coppers from the cabinet, called Chunhong to the backyard, and handed it to her. "Chunhong, I've realized that the work here isn't suitable for you. You'd better find another job. This is double the salary for the past few days. Consider it a small compensation from us." "Why?" "I've been doing a good job these days. I've been strictly following the restaurant's rules and regulations," Chunhong said indignantly. "Then recite the 4th rule." Zhou sneered. "You are not allowed to steal in the restaurant, and you must hand over a guest's belongings if you pick them up." After Chunhong finished reciting, she was stunned for a moment as she thought of something, and her expression turned ugly. Zhou said directly, "I think you already understand the reason." I don't need to say anything further, right? It'll be embarrassing if I continue. Chunhong's face turned red after she heard that. Then, she puffed up her cheeks and glared at Zhou angrily before turning around and running out. Seeing this, Zhou shook her head and began getting busy. When she was almost done with her work, Gu Qingrui drove an unremarkable carriage to the main entrance. After Zhou received the news, she immediately called Dehua over. As for Tian Zhuang, he had to wait for Qian Zhuang and the others before he could go back. After dinner, Gu Qingrui asked, "Did you fire Chunhong today?" "Yes. This afternoon, she stole some spices from the kitchen, so I fired her." Zhou then asked curiously, "Have you found out who Sun Liang is?" She was sure Chunhong would contact the person who ordered her around if she was fired. Yes, Sun Liang is his current name. He used to be the manager of Dongxin restaurant, Wang Quan. Wang Quan. Could it be the Chow family? It's very likely. It seems like they're going to make a move, and we must be careful. Fine, but you have to be careful when you make a house visitation. Don't let anyone take advantage of that. Gu Qingrui nodded in agreement. I will be careful. The same goes for the restaurant. I've installed a camera in the kitchen. If anyone dares do anything, I'll not let them off. Gu Qingrui was stunned for a moment, and then he smiled. All right, but be careful. Don't let anyone find out. Otherwise, it'll be bad for you. Chapter 193. A chase. On the other hand, in a manor in the northern part of the town, Chao Lanqing said after listening to Wang Quan's report, that means they're vigilant. It's only been a few days, and they've already found out about the girl. Indeed. I thought that it would take some time and didn't expect them to react so quickly. They are more difficult to deal with than we thought. Did they find you out? I think they have. Some strangers have appeared outside the courtyard these past 2 days. They probably fired her after confirming my identity. Alright, since we've already alerted them, let's move on to the second step. After Chao Lanqing finished speaking, his eyes turned sharp, and he crushed the teacup in his hand. Young master, Wang Quan said hesitantly, are you sure this will alarm the third prince's forces here? If we are exposed first, we are doomed. The two are Zhou Weiming's saviors, and they get along well. Do you think Manager Liu would do nothing if something happened to them? As soon as he moves, we'll take them from the back. I don't believe that we can't find their nest. But the county mayor still has a garrison, don't worry, I have my own arrangements. Alright, I will make the arrangements then. Go, but remember not to go to that courtyard in the future. Also, try not to show your face again. I understand. Wang Quan answered and left for the lower room. The next day, Gu Qingrui was returning from the village when he saw 2 people approaching him in a hurry. Gu Qingrui was shocked to see their fierce faces. When did such people appear in a small town? Before he could think further, the 2 of them rushed over to Gu Qingrui. Gu Qingrui immediately realized that the 2 were coming for him. He immediately turned around and started running in a zigzag line. At the same time, he opened his first aid box and took out the knockout powder and the air gun hidden inside. He threw the knockout powder into the air and quickly pierced through the paper bag, scattering the powder around. However, the 2 men were smart. When they saw that something was wrong, they immediately separated. When Gu Qingrui saw this, he used the air gun to hit the arm of the person who was chasing him the closest. That person had been distracted for a moment because he dodged the knockout powder. During that split second of distraction, the steel bead hit his arm. He grimaced in pain, and the other man was shocked by this. None of them had expected that he had not only hidden medicine but also hidden weapons. For a moment, they didn't dare act rashly and wanted to see what he was up to. Seeing this, Gu Qingrui grinned and took the opportunity to replace the steel balls in the gun with 2 anesthetic needles. However, he didn't shoot at them when they were on full alert. Instead, he turned around and ran into the mountains. If he could, he wanted to kill them in the mountains. When the 2 of them saw him enter the mountain, they looked at each other and immediately gave chase. Otherwise, if he ran away, they would not be able to report back, and their companions would also laugh at them. They did not expect that Gu Qingrui, a scholar, could tear through the mountainous terrain like a monkey. He was running faster than they could, and soon his figure disappeared. Damn, we got outdated info. Who said that he was just a doctor with some skills? His endurance and speed are better than ours. One of them held onto a tree and exclaimed while panting. We've indeed underestimated our enemy. If we had known, we would have waited until we got closer before making our move. The other replied in frustration. As soon as he finished speaking, he froze for a moment before falling to the ground. Chapter 194. Turning the tables. The other man was shocked, and just as he was about to go forward to check, he suddenly felt a sting on his back. He then quickly fell over on top of the other man. Gu Qingrui brushed away the loose grass on his head and climbed out of a bush. He stepped forward and retrieved the 2 needles, searched their bodies, and found 5 taels of silver and a banknote worth 90 taels of silver with 2 daggers. However, he did not find anything that could prove their identity. This was fine, and he could now take everything for himself. After packing up, he sat on the side and thought about how to deal with them. Ultimately, he used their daggers and stabbed each of their thighs, relieved to see they didn't wake up. As for whether they would bleed to death or be eaten by wild beasts, it was none of his business. As he descended the mountain, he was relieved that there was no hocus-pocus or fantastical martial arts in this world. Otherwise, he knew he wouldn't be able to escape death today. Now, he was just curious as to who sent these 2 men. After much thought, he could pin it on Chao Launching of the Chao family. It seemed like he had to alert his wife as soon as possible. At the thought of this, he quickened his pace. He did not know that he had not walked far when 2 more people came out of hiding. These 2 weren't as kind as Gu Qingrui, as they dragged the 2 attackers into the mountains and fed them to the wolves. It was almost dark when Gu Qingrui returned to his clinic. After keeping his earnings there, he drove his cart to the restaurant. Since Qian Zhuang and the others were also there, they went home together. After they arrived home and finished dinner, Gu Qingrui told Zhou Ying about the assassination attempt. Babe, don't go out alone anymore. Remember to prepare something for self-defense, too. You're not hurt, are you? Zhou Ying looked at him and asked. No, I didn't let them get close to me. Gu Qingrui reassured her. Remember, don't go out alone in the future. I know, but I'm mainly worried about you. If worse comes to worst on my end, they'll just bring them into my interspace and kill them. Alright, but you have to be careful when using your interspace. Otherwise, it'll be troublesome if you're discovered. After that, the couple cleaned up, and Gu Qingrui had to attend to 3 more patients. The 2 entered the interspace as night fell, preparing their self-defense items, and then got busy. Manager Liu also found out about Gu Shengrui's incident through 2 of his men. He sighed and said, I foresee it's going to get worse. You 2 must protect their safety. However, if they can handle it, just do what you did today and help them clean up. Of course, it'd be best to find out the enemy's hiding place. Remember, you must be extremely careful and not chase after a cornered enemy. We understand, Uncle Liu. Well, take our leave then. The 2 of them nodded solemnly. All right. Go down and take 2 taels of silver as your reward. Manager Liu nodded. After that, he went out to look for Sun Hongliang and instructed, the snakes are starting to come out of their holes. You must be careful over there and, at the same time, protect their safety. I understand. Sun Hongliang, his nephew, replied respectfully. Okay. Also, do a good job fortifying the restaurant's defenses. Don't let them be framed for anything. If that happens, we'll be in a tough spot. Alright, Sun Hongliang then asked in confusion, Uncle, why don't you just reveal my identity? This way, not only can we better protect them, but we can also save a lot of trouble. Chapter 195 Revelation, if we were to be direct with them, would they still accept you? Manager Lu replied in a miffed tone. I don't think it's a big deal. Besides, if they had their guard up against us, they wouldn't have accepted me back then. Moreover, according to my observation, honesty and loyalty were the most important things for the husband and wife. They don't have many other concerns. If we continue to hide it like this, it'll be hard to explain if they find out about my identity down the road. Now is the best time to come clean, and this is an opportunity we shouldn't let pass. Manager Lu nodded thoughtfully and replied, I'll report this to General Zhou and see what he thinks. Afterward, he went to a small courtyard, wrote a note, and sent it out with a pigeon. Over the next 2 days, Zhou Ying and Gu Qingrui didn't go out alone. Everything was normal. At the same time, Manager Lu also received General Zhou's reply, telling him to do as he saw fit. The uncle and nephew discussed and decided to reveal their positions to avoid any misunderstandings in the future. So, during lunch break, Sun Hongliang went to Zhou Ying in the front lobby, whispered his identity as their shadow guard, and bowed deeply. I've let down your trust, please punish me. Zhou Ying just smiled. To be honest, when Manager Lu brought him here, she already knew that he was someone from General Zhou's or the third prince's side. Therefore, she wasn't too surprised to hear him reveal his identity. But she didn't expect him to be a shadow guard. She looked at him curiously and asked, so what you're saying is that you're quite skilled? Sun Hongliang was stunned for a moment and then nodded. I'm mainly trained in how to run a business as a manager. However, it shouldn't be a problem for me to deal with a few men. Wow, I really couldn't tell from your scholarly appearance. You're not angry. Why should I be angry? Isn't it fine as long as we cooperate happily? Besides, you're here to protect us. We'll feel much more at ease with you here, so please take care of us in the future. Zhou Ying replied with a smile. Thank you for your trust, mistress. Sun Hongliang smiled and bowed. Do a good job, and they'll give you 5% of our profits as a bonus at the end of the year. Zhou Ying promised. She then turned around and went to the back to take a rest. As for his identity, she couldn't care less as long as he didn't threaten their safety. She would have to be more cautious in the future when removing items from her interspace. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if he found something weird and reported it. That night, Zhou Ying told Gu Qingrui about Sun Hongliang, and he didn't have much reaction either. From the moment they saved Zhou Huaiming, they knew they were on the third prince's side. Instead, he said, in that case, you don't have to worry about your business and just have to take hold of the overall situation. Also, ask him to help bring over 1 or 2 more managers. In this way, if he leaves or we open another branch, we will have someone to help. True. It's a waste not to use a talent delivered to our doorstep. I'll use him appropriately. Zhou Ying nodded in agreement. She had to train a few more chefs as she didn't want to waste more time in the back kitchen. Not only was it tedious, but it was also bad for her skin. Gu Qingrui smiled and reminded her. Try not to take things from your interspace to the restaurant. If you really are short of something, ask the workshop to increase their production. I know. Zhou Ying nodded in agreement. This year's situation isn't going to be good, he added. Do you think we should take advantage of the fact that the price of food hasn't increased yet and no one is watching us? We could take some grains out of your interspace and store them in the warehouse, just in case. Chapter 196 Panicking due to concern. Sure. Weren't you going to transport soybeans and green beans here anyway? Mix the grains in with them, but don't put too much, or it'll be hard to explain. Gu Qingrui said after a moment of hesitation. All right. On the other end, Manager Lu found out from Sun Hongliang that not only were Zhou Ying and Gu Qingrui not angry but were pleased, further placing him in an important position. He felt a little ashamed of his narrow-mindedness. Meanwhile, Wang Quan, who had been waiting for his good news, was in a terrible mood. Not only did the people he sent out not return, but they were nowhere to be seen. Gu Qingrui was completely fine, still alive and kicking. Therefore, after cursing for a while, he sent more people out. However, because the two men sent out this time were unclear about what happened to their predecessor, they did not keep an eye on Gu Qingrui but instead went to Zhou Ying. After 2 days, they found that Zhou Ying's life was routine, and someone was always accompanying her. She never went to any remote places, which meant they had no chance to do anything. Therefore, they could only think of a way to lure her out. One day, they took advantage of Gu Shengrui's out for a patient visit and disguised themselves as villagers. They rushed into Grassland Taste Restaurant and found Sun Hongliang asking in a panicked tone, "Do you have a manager called Zhou Ying here?" "You're?" Sun Hongliang asked as he looked up at him. "Oh, I'm from Huan village. Dr. Gu was being hunted down on his way to our village. Fortunately, he was saved by our villagers, but he was seriously injured. He instructed me to come over and tell you to call for a doctor and drive a cart to pick him up." Sun Hongliang was shocked when he heard that. After that, he didn't think much about it and went to find Zhou Ying to tell her about it. Zhou Ying's mind went blank when she heard that. After returning to her senses, she quickly called Fang Qing and said, "Hurry up and get a cart. Well, bring Dr. Luo," and set off immediately. "Okay, don't worry. Since Dr. Gu can still send someone over, he should be fine." Fang Qing immediately took off his apron. The two got on a carriage, picked up Dr. Luo, and rushed to Huan village. Sun Hongliang waited for them to leave. When he returned, he found the villages had disappeared and felt a little strange. Even if the other party didn't ask for anything in return, they should at least head back together and show them the way. He thought about it and suddenly came to a realization. Oh no! If Gu Qingrui was awake and alive, he was a doctor, so how could he not be able to treat his wounds? Or, he could have also asked someone to send him back. This meant. Thinking of this, Sun Hongliang broke out in a cold sweat. He gave Gu Wen a few instructions and ran to the clinic. However, he was still a step too late. They had already set off. He had no choice but to run and try to catch up to them. Sun Hongliang didn't see that a man wearing a bamboo hat among the pedestrians had quietly followed after him when he saw him running. Because Fang Ding didn't drive the cart too fast on the streets, Sun Hongliang managed to catch up to the carriage, and they were already out of town. Before he could say anything, a small stone suddenly flew from behind and hit the horse's butt. The horse was startled and immediately galloped away. Fang Qing jumped in shock and quickly steadied the carriage. Sun Hongliang turned his head and looked in the direction of the stone. He noticed a man who resembled the villager who had reported about Gu Shengrui's situation. The person turned around and returned to town. Sun Hongliang saw that it was impossible to catch up to the carriage, so he turned back and looked for the man. But the man was already gone. Remembering that Zhou Ying had someone protecting her, he didn't do anything unnecessary. Instead, he returned to the restaurant. Chapter 197 Preparation. On the other end, Showing didn't think much and bumped into Dr. Luo roughly when the horse galloped away. They were having a rough time in the carriage. When they finally stabilized, Showing lifted the curtain and was about to scold Fong Qing, but she saw him trying to stabilize the carriage in a hurry. She was stunned and asked, "Fong Qing, what's going on?" "Mistress, I don't know which wicked fella threw a stone at the horses but it scared the horse," Fong Qing shouted while he was busy. Showing was shocked. Although she didn't know what was wrong, she knew something wasn't right. This was because even if someone accidentally threw a stone at the horse would not be this frightened. The only explanation was that the person had deliberately hurled the rock hard. At the thought of this, she immediately thought of Gu Qingrui being hunted down a few days ago. Could it be that someone tricked her into coming out? "Fong Qing, when the horse stops, turn around and head back," she commanded. "Miss Zhou, what's the meaning of this? Why aren't you going to save Qingrui?" Dr. Luo turned his head and asked in astonishment. Zhou hesitated for a while but still told him her guess. "Grandpa Luo, this trip is too dangerous. I will bring Qingrui back myself." Dr. Luo's heart ached when he heard this. "There's no need. Since we're here, there's no reason to go back. Let's go together." "But, no buts. It's not safe for me to get off now anyway." Zhou saw the determination in his eyes, so she no longer refused. She took out a small box from under the seat, and inside it was the self-defense stuff she had prepared before in case of an accident. She didn't anticipate actually using it one day. She then took out 2 paper bags, one big and one small, and handed them to Dr. Luo. "The big one is a tear-inducing powder, and the small one is a knockout powder. I have more of them, and it's more important to protect ourselves." After saying that, she also passed 2 bags to Fong Qing and handed him a dagger. "If there's anything, just yell. You don't have to save the chili powder, we have more." "Understood, mistress." "Don't worry," Fong Qing assured her after taking it. To be honest, after listening to her analysis, he was more excited than afraid. First, he could test his strength, and second, he could protect his mistress in return for her care. Most importantly, he may even become a dependable aid to her. As for Zhou herself, she took out a small, exquisite crossbow and a boning knife, which were placed at the bottom of the box. At the same time, she smeared some knockout powder on them. She put 2 packets of chili powder in her pocket. The rest were placed on the side of the cart door, and anyone who needed them could take them. When they were ready, they arrived at a small forest. No, it wasn't a forest, but a forest-like green belt by the river. Fong Qing was on immediate alert. 2 whistling sounds rang out just as they were about to leave the forest. The horse immediately fell to the ground, and Fong Qing, who had been on guard, barely dodged it. 2 men in black quickly slid down the rope from a tree not far away. One rushed toward Fong Qing, while the other ran toward the car. "Mistress, be careful!" Fong Qing exclaimed in shock. After shouting, the 2 men came up to them. The person charging at Fong Qing kicked him in the chest when he was in front of him. Fong Qing immediately crossed his arms to block it, and at the same time, he kicked back at the man's waist. Chapter 198. Subduing them. The man was shocked. He somersaulted in the air and dropped the rope to land on the ground. However, the moment he landed, the packet of the tear-inducing powder in Fong Qing's hand was flung and smashed into his head. Although he closed his eyes in time, the spicy powder still made him sneeze. At the same time, he cursed, "Despicable. Rich coming from you guys." Fong Qing didn't waste any more words with him after that, because he knew from that short exchange that he wasn't his opponent's match. He had to strike first. So, taking advantage of his attacker's inconvenience, he took out a dagger and stabbed him. The man's ears twitched, and he immediately blocked it with his knife. However, the chili powder made him unable to open his eyes. Seeing this, Fang Qing was secretly happy. It seemed that the boss tear-inducing powder was effective. Thinking of this, he lightened his steps and began to fight with him. It didn't take long for 3 cuts to appear on the man's body, one of which was on his knife-holding hand. The attacker was quickly subdued and knocked out. On the other side, another man kicked the cart's roof off, then slid over. Dr. Luo was shocked and immediately turned sideways to avoid the attacker's foot. When he came down from his rope, Dr. Luo nimbly threw out a handful of chili powder. Unfortunately, Dr. Luo only threw it onto the other party's stomach. It had no effect, and he choked on it instead. Zhou was prepared. She blocked his kick with a cushion and dodged. At the same time, she took out her crossbow and shot it at the man's chest. The man in black was shocked by the sudden turn and quickly spun around the rope. However, the arrow still hit his arm. He had no choice but to fall from the rope and rush directly at Zhou. Zhou feared Dr. Luo getting hurt, so she dodged with a front somersault and landed on the ground. She turned around and aimed the crossbow at the man in black. The man in black seemed to have sensed her intentions and quickly raised his knife to attack Dr. Luo. Zhou didn't hesitate and shot at the man's hand that was holding the knife. Seeing this, the man had to dodge. He jumped off the carriage, somersaulted forward, and assailed Zhou. Zhou saw this and smiled sweetly. She threw the tear powder between them and shot it with a crossbow. At the same time, she turned around and ran. As expected, there was a scream from behind, followed by a series of sneezes, but soon there was silence. Zhou turned her head and looked at the motionless man on the ground. She used her crossbow to prod him twice, cautiously. After making sure that there was no movement, she said, "As expected, the faster you move, the faster the medicine will take effect." However, just in case, she still pulled down the curtain, tore it into 4, and tied his hands and feet up like a pig. At this moment, Fang Qing came over with another prisoner and asked, "Mistress, what should we do with the 2 of them?" "What do we do?" Zhou paused for a moment and turned her head to look at Dr. Luo, who had finally recovered. "Grandpa Luo, please give them some medicine to sleep for a day." "You brat, you didn't even remind me. You're killing me here." After Dr. Luo finished speaking, he sneezed again and walked over with a bag of knockout powder. Looking at the eyes and nose of the men in black, swollen red by the spiciness, Dr. Luo smiled sinisterly and said, "Zhou, can you give me 2 bags of tear gas powder for self-protection? This thing is quite useful." "No problem. I can even give you a sack." Zhou nodded. "This is more like it." Dr. Luo stepped forward, pinched the black man's chin, and poured a small pinch of knockout powder into his mouth. He gave some to the other and said, "All right, I'll leave the rest to you guys." Chapter 199. Someone saved them. Zhou looked at the 2 people on the ground with a troubled expression. With others around, she couldn't kill them and put them into her inner space to be used as fertilizer. However, she was unwilling to let them go. At this moment, a small bee flew past her, and her eyes lit up. She told Fang Qing, "Comb the 2 of them and see if there's any identification. Of course, if there's money on them, help yourself." "I understand. Don't worry, mistress." Fang Qing's eyes brightened, and he immediately went to work. Zhou turned around and found the small box that contained the chili powder. She wrapped a small bag of white sugar from her interspace in the small box as a cover. "Mistress, there's about 4 taels of broken silver and silver notes worth around 90 taels." Fong Qing summarized and handed the silver to her. 90 taels. Zhou took it and pondered. The people who chased after Gu Qingrui last time also seemed to have 90 taels of silver on them. In addition to the broken silver pieces, it was a total of 50 taels of silver per person. They should be the same group of people and sent by the same person. Otherwise, how could the amount of silver they had on them be so similar? Do they have any marks on their bodies? He asked. No, both of them were clean. There wasn't even a mark on their knives. It seems that the other party is cautious. Zhou concluded and took out 30 silver. She handed them to Fong Qing and said, "You've worked hard. Take this." "No need, mistress." Take it. You're not young anymore. Keep it for your future wife." After Zhou finished speaking, she stuffed the banknote into his hand. The two used their attacker's rope to tie the two men to a tree. Finally, Zhou asked Fong Qing to go to the river, wet the sugar with it, and smear it on the faces and hands of the two men in black. After that, she turned her head and saw Dr. Luo squatting in front of the horse, examining it. Zhou walked over and asked, "Grandpa Luo, how's the horse? Can it be saved?" Dr. Luo shook his head and said with a grave expression, "Their archery skills are good. One arrow pierced the horse's windpipe, so you'd be more careful in the future. Thank you for your advice, Grandpa Luo. This was found on their bodies, take it as my apology." Zhou said this while pulling out 3 10-tael silver notes and handing them to him. Dr. Luo raised his head and refused. "There's no need. If you really want to help me, prepare a table of wine and food for tonight. I need to have a good drink." "All right, then, it's a deal. We shouldn't stay here for long, let's hurry up and leave." Zhou reminded them and picked up her small box. She put away all their weapons, picked up the 2 attackers' knives, and walked toward Huan village. However, they did not walk far before they saw Gu Qingrui sitting in the ox cart and the coachman talking and laughing. The 3 finally heaved a sigh of relief. When Gu Qingrui saw the 3 of them, especially the bloodstains on Fong Qing's body, he was worried. "What happened to you?" he asked. Zhou did not hide anything and told him what had happened today. "It seems like they won't stop until they die." Gu Qingrui gritted his teeth and cursed. "Get in the cart. Well, make a big deal out of this and send them to the county government," Gu Qingrui decided. After he finished speaking, he stepped onto the ox cart first. Zhou and the other 2 immediately followed, but when they returned to the small forest, there was no one. Even the broken carriage and the horse's body were gone. Did someone save them? Fong Qing paused for a moment, then immediately searched around. He knew that they would only wake up after 24 hours if no one came to save them. Chapter 200 Verification. As expected, the rope above had been cut off at waist height. He ran back in a panic and asked, "Mistress, I think they were rescued. Don't tell me they have helpers." Dr. Luo cried out in alarm. Gu Qingrui and Zhou looked at each other and had a rough idea of what was happening. If the other party's people had saved them, there was no need to clean up the scene so thoroughly. In that case, it could only be someone on their side. Thinking of the news that Sun Hongliang had revealed, the couple smiled. This saved them a lot of trouble. After that, they took the ox cart and returned to town safely. When they parted, Zhou gave Gu Qingrui the money she had found today to buy another carriage and then returned to the restaurant. When Sun Hongliang saw Zhou and Fong Qing return, he heaved a huge sigh of relief. "Mistress, you're back. Is Dr. Gu all right?" "He's fine and doing well." After Zhou said this, she diverted Fong Qing to the back kitchen. She walked to Sun Hongliang and asked, "Do you still remember what the person who sent you the message looked like?" I'm ashamed to say this, but my negligence caused you to suffer. Sun Hongliang apologized and told her what happened after they left. At the same time, he also revealed to her that when they went out, there would be people protecting them in the dark. With her thoughts confirmed, Zhou heaved a sigh of relief and replied, I don't blame you for this. You were just as concerned and confused, too. I mean, I didn't react in time either. But we have to be more careful in the future. Fortunately, we prepared some self-defense items in the carriage beforehand, otherwise, we really wouldn't have been able to come back today. Yes, I will find the messenger as soon as possible. It's best if you don't go out for the time being. I will remind Qingruo. Zhou nodded and told him a total of 180 silvers, about 50 silver taels from each assassin, and then turned back to the kitchen. However, even if she did not punish Sun Hongliang, it did not mean that he would not be punished. She had just returned home that night when Manager Liu summoned Sun Hongliang over. Sun Hongliang looked at Manager Liu's serious expression and immediately understood what was happening. He knelt on one knee and apologized, Captain Liu, please punish me for my negligence. You still have the nerve to ask for punishment? If they hadn't prepared in advance today, Zhou and the other two would have died in that forest. How would we explain this to General Zhou? Manager Liu scolded angrily. What have you learned all these years? He pointed at Sun Hongliang's nose and scolded. You can't even tell if the person is problematic or not. It's a small oversight. Please punish me, Captain. Sun Hongliang lowered his head in defeat. Go back and write down your punishment 100 times. If it weren't for the fact that they can't do without you, I would have sent you back to the base and trained you for a month. Manager Liu waved his hand. Yes. Sun Hongliang thought of the messenger and told him the truth. I feel that this person is not simple and must be investigated as soon as possible. In addition, Zhou told me a piece of news today. She said that whether it was the people who hunted her today or those who hunted Gu Qingruo a few days ago, each had about 50 taels of silver on them. 50 taels of silver. Shopkeeper Liu immediately understood what was going on. This was most likely the reward for their mission, which meant that these people were from other places. It seemed that Qiao Lansheng's backer had emerged, as General Zhou had said. Is there a mark on the banknote? He asked. Chapter 201 Fallout. No, it's just normal silver notes from the Baotong Bank. Sun Hongliang said. I see. It seems like our real opponent is here. When Manager Liu said this, he thought of the two people his subordinates had brought back and their interrogation. However, the results were disappointing. They could only tell from their accent that they were from the capital and nothing else. He had no choice but to use the two of them as bait. Wang Quan had suffered setback after setback, and knowing that he couldn't hide anymore, he reported to Qiao Lansheng. Qiao Lansheng was so angry that he choked Wang Quan's neck and said through gritted teeth, You fool, those 10 people are death warriors. Do you know what that means? If they were alive, they would have crawled back no matter what. Since there's no news, it means they're dead. You're stupid enough to send 2 more even knowing that. Why don't you die from your stupidity? Arg, ah. Wang Quan's eyes rolled back, and his hands clutched Qiao Lansheng's hands tightly, struggling desperately to get him to let go. However, the enraged Qiao Lansheng didn't stop. He knew very well that if this got out, he would be punished too. Just as Wang Quan was about to be strangled to death, he started struggling physically, kicking and hitting him. Although he couldn't use much strength, Qiao Lansheng regained his senses and threw him aside. He knew it was not the right time for him to show his face, and he did not have any more trustworthy subordinates. There were many things that Wang Quan needed to take care of. After being thrown to the ground, Wang Quan began to take big breaths before slowly recovering. However, after recovering, he realized that his throat was so painful that he struggled to swallow. He crawled and stood up, walking to Qiao Lanqing and pointing to his throat. Qiao Lanqing looked at the bruised handprint on Wang Quan's neck and narrowed his eyes. Go to my private account and take some money to find a doctor. In addition, stop all operations for the time being and wait for my next order. Wang Quan nodded and bowed, turned around, and walked out. Qiao Lanqing looked at his back with a hint of killing intent in his eyes. It was no wonder that he was able to ruin the business of Dongxin restaurant in the past with his meager abilities. Qiao Lanqing had to cultivate a few more trustworthy people as soon as possible, or he would get into trouble sooner or later. Although Wang Quan didn't know that Qiao Lanqing intended to kill him, he knew that after this incident, his young master would no longer put him in an important position, and he was prepared to prepare a way out. After this incident, Zhou Ying and her husband were more well-prepared every time they went out, especially Gu Qingrui. They tried to reduce the chances of going out as much as possible. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 days had passed. The days were peaceful, but the two did not relax. Instead, they became more and more vigilant. At night, they tied Zhuang up and set up some traps in the courtyard. However, the couple was getting busier because everyone began to plant chili seedlings. At the same time, Zhou Ying also took out rapeseed and lettuce for everyone to produce. Of course, she also requested that what they grew to be sold to Grassland Taste Restaurant. After the Qingming festival, the work in the field was almost done. That night, just as Gu Qingrui and his wife were about to start dinner, second Uncle Gu and Gu Qingxi came looking for them. Seeing that there were only stir-fried green bean sprouts and chive scrambled eggs on the table, second Uncle Gu was stunned and exclaimed, "Your restaurant's business is so good, and you are only having this for dinner? It's not that bad. Have you guys eaten? If not, let's eat together." Gu Qingrui greeted them. "You two hurry up and eat as we've already eaten." Second Uncle Gu shook his head and said. Chapter 202 A Way Out. Alright, then you guys can sit and wait. Gu Qingrui wasn't overly polite. He went to the west room to get a plate of stir-fried pumpkin seeds and handed it to them. Have some snacks as you wait. After that, he turned around and had dinner. After Zhou Ying finished eating, she poured a glass of water for the father and son. Once Gu Qingrui finished too, he asked, "Second uncle, why did you bring Qingxi here today?" "Right, Qingxi said that he wants to study medicine. I thought that this was also a way out for him. We can't let him just be a store assistant, so I came to see if you could take him as a disciple." Second Uncle Gu put down the pumpkin seeds and asked with a serious expression. Of course, this also left a way out for himself. He realized that his eldest son had secretly bought 2 acres of land to grow vegetables, and they had never told him. In fact, if he had not discovered it, they might have kept it a secret forever. If his eldest son were unfilial, he would have to turn to his youngest son and need someone to take care of him in his old age. This was why he couldn't stand by and watch Qingxi stay home and work on something unimportant to his future. Gu Qingrui looked at Gu Qingxi and asked, "Qingxi, do you really want to learn medicine?" "I want to learn. Not only can I earn money by practicing medicine, but I can also save lives and earn respect." Gu Qingxi nodded. "You're quite realistic and understand your goal." Gu Qingrui nodded in agreement, then said, "How about this, you go to the clinic and be an apprentice for 3 months. I'll also observe if you have talent in this area. If you do, then continue to study. If you don't, you will have to change your profession." He paused briefly and asked, "What do you guys think? This arrangement is best. I will leave him to you." Second Uncle Gu expressed his delight. "I'll listen to you, third brother." Gu Qingxi nodded repeatedly. All right, come over early tomorrow morning, and we'll go together. Gu Qingrui added. After that, they chatted for a bit, and Zhou Ying and her husband knew the Gu family had finished their farm work prep. Father Gu and second Uncle Gu were planning to rent a boat to start a river transportation business. Their snack shop in the town had stabilized and was handed over to Mrs. Liu and Mrs. Yao to manage. Gu Qingrui hesitated for a moment before reminding them, you better be careful. Elder Qiao's son, Qiao Lanxing, is still alive. He might make a move on you. What? Didn't the Qiao family get exiled? Second Uncle Gu exclaimed in shock. He's back, and we were both attacked. Fortunately, we brought something for self-defense, so we survived. You guys should be careful. Are you hurt? Second Uncle Gu asked as he sized them up. No, we were afraid of being robbed, so we always had something for self-defense. That's how we managed to survive their assassination attempt. Gu Qingrui explained. But didn't Zhou Huaiming do everything to stamp out the Qiao family? How could they make such a big mistake? I think you know the current situation in the court better than I do. Second Uncle Gu did not speak after hearing this. The emperor had a total of 6 children, and 4 of them had already grown up. In addition to the emperor's distrustful personality, although the court seemed harmonious on the surface, undercurrents surged while his children fought for power. It was especially fierce between the eldest prince and the 4th prince. One was the legitimate heir, while the other was the son of the emperor's most favored consort. The two sides were almost at each other's throats at this point. The Gu family was a sacrifice in this political struggle. They had to be very, very careful when it came to their new river transportation business. Otherwise, they would be reduced to the streets if something happened again. Chapter 203 Water Wheel. After that, second Uncle Gu wasn't in the mood to chat anymore. So, after exchanging a few polite greetings, he brought Gu Qingxi home. But just as he left, he returned and said, "Oh, I almost forgot. There's still something I want to discuss with you." "Do say," Gu Qingrui replied. "Right, I heard that you drew the water wheel. You see, we were wondering if we could help you sell it. At that time, our 2 families and the Qian family will share the profits. What do you think?" "The water wheel is done," Zhou Ying asked happily. The wheat in the manor was waiting to be watered, and she was getting impatient. "It's done. We tried to install it today, and the water test will probably take place the day after tomorrow. The chief will definitely inform you by then." "That's great. It'll be much easier with the water wheel." "Indeed. Otherwise, it would be too time-consuming and laborious to fetch water from the river bit by bit. Thanks for creating that quickly." Gu Qingrui smiled as he spoke. He then looked at Zhou Ying and asked, "Do we still have to get involved in the water wheel?" Zhou Ying shook her head. "No, we don't know any carpentry and don't have time to run a business. We won't get involved, just give us a water wheel will do." She didn't want to have any business dealings with the old family. Otherwise, there would be pointless arguments in the future. Gu Qingrui nodded in agreement. "This is also what I want. So, second uncle, if you want to start a water wheel business, I suggest you look for the patriarch, the village chief, and the Tian family to discuss. In addition, this water wheel is something that benefits the country and the people. I believe it will not be long before word gets out, and the officials may intervene." Second Uncle Gu nodded and asked, "This water wheel can be sold at a high price in areas with little rain. Are you really going to give it up?" "Yes, as long as we can get what we need." Gu Qingrui nodded. "I'll release this news, then." "No problem. Remember to get us a water wheel." "I know." Second Uncle Gu responded and went out with Gu Qingxi. The next night, the patriarch and the village chief weren't sure of what they heard, so they came to confirm it again. After knowing that the couple really only wanted a water wheel, they turned and left. After a whole day of hard work, they finally managed to draw water from the river on the third day. The villagers were delighted and didn't have to worry about watering the land this year. The next step was to dig a canal, and the land in the village would be irrigated. 5 days later, the second water wheel was created. Zhou Ying asked them to send it to the manor, making Chang Shun and the others jump in joy. In less than half a month, orders for the water wheel mobilized the labor force of the entire village. One day, Zhou Ying had just entered her restaurant when she saw Manager Lu waiting inside. She was stunned for a moment before walking over and asking, "Uncle Lu, what brings you here today?" "General Zhou is waiting for you in the bamboo garden on the second floor," Manager Lu stated as he rose to his feet. "Since General Zhou is here, let's go up together." Zhou Ying offered and went upstairs with him. After pushing the door open, she saw Zhou Huaiming eating and drinking tea with a look of enjoyment on his face. She went forward and said, "Hello, Brother Zhou. Have a seat." "Has Brother Gu already left for the clinic?" "Yes, he went there early in the morning. The temperature difference between day and night is quite drastic now, and many people have caught colds. The clinic sure is busy. You guys sit down while I call him over," Zhou Ying said and was about to go out. "Forget it. There's nothing that important for him to come over at this time. Don't call for him." Zhou Huaiming quickly stopped her. Chapter 204 Looking for the Blueprint, What's the Matter? Zhou Ying asked as she sat opposite him. Manager Lu, on the other hand, walked to Zhou Huaiming and poured a cup of tea for each of them before sitting down. "There are two main things. First, I just missed your cooking and want to come over to satisfy my craving, but I don't want to have hot pot this time. The other thing is about the water wheel. The north of the Ming dynasty is short of water, so I hope you can sell the drawings to me. You can name a price," Zhou Huaiming stated. Zhou Ying shook her head with a smile and said, "I'm not selling the blueprint, as this is a good thing for the country and the people. If you can use it well, feel free to take it. But there is one thing, you have to leave some water wheels for us. The whole village is working overtime, and I don't want them to work for nothing." Zhou Huaiming gave her a thumbs up and said, "Such selflessness, then this matter is settled. I'll see if I can get you some rewards later. As for the water wheel in your village, they're selling it too expensively. I'll discuss it with them, and I won't ask them to sell at a loss." "Alright, do as you see fit." Zhou Ying didn't say anything more after hearing that. After asking them to rest, she went to the kitchen to work. First, she made the base sauce and dipping sauce for the hot pot and began to prepare some dishes. As there were just a few people, she prepared 6 dishes and a soup. They were 4-flavor meatballs, braised pork with pickled vegetables, stew beef, cumin mutton, stir-fried shiitake mushrooms with vegetables, bean sprouts in vinegar sauce, and fish ball soup. While preparing the dishes, Manager Lu reported to General Zhou what had happened recently. Zhou Huaiming nodded. "I didn't expect them to know how to protect themselves. I'm relieved." Manager Lu added, "The key is that they have a variety of things in their hands." Putting the knockout powder out of the equation, who would have thought they would make chili and mustard powder into weapons? Surprisingly, the effect was quite good too. One of them almost went blind from that. If our people didn't go in time, those 2 attackers would have either frozen to death or been stung to death by bees at night. No matter how we interrogated or tortured them, they didn't speak. But what's funny is that the sugar on their wounds attracted ants, and the attackers spilled everything they knew. Manager Lu burst out laughing. doesn't this also provide us with a means of interrogation? With a smile, Zhou Huaiming stated. Since you're almost done with the investigation, let's wrap things up. Otherwise, ITLL threaten the couple if we continue this. They're already on guard, so the next time the attackers strike, ITLL be much more brutal than the previous 2 times. Alright, I'll make arrangements. It's fine. Well, go after dinner. Otherwise, it's boring for me to have lunch alone. Alright, it seems that I'm in for a treat today. After the food was served, the two ate to their heart's content and then went off to do their tasks. They agreed to go together in the evening to get the blueprints. On the other hand, Qiao Lanxing had also found the source of the blueprint. He had initially planned to get someone to steal it but changed his mind when he received the news that Zhou Huaiming had gone to Grassland Taste Restaurant. At night, he immediately reported the matter to his superior. Young master, I heard Zhou Huaiming didn't bring many people with him this time. Why don't we? We can know their limit then. You've forgotten about the 4 people we lost. Although assassinations would vent our anger, it's the stupidest method. Don't forget that many of their people are already stationed here. What you need to do now is find everyone and capture them all in one fell swoop, do you understand? Chapter 205 Escape I. As Qiao Lanxing said this, the sound of fighting suddenly came from outside. The two looked at each other and quickly looked out the window. They saw Zhou Huaiming rushing in with several times more people than their men. In just a short while, more than half of their men were killed. When the young master saw this, he was so angry that he wanted to give Qiao Lanxing a hard slap. It seemed like an inexperienced person couldn't be put in an important position, no matter how smart they were. However, he knew that now was not the time to be angry. He immediately pushed the bookcase aside, opened a 5-foot-tall, half-meter-wide sliding door, and quickly jumped in. Qiao Lanxing immediately chased after him. The young master, who was about to close the door, hesitated for a moment before letting him in. He then closed the door and said, "Remember, your sister is still in my hands." After he finished speaking, he turned around and ran into the tunnel. Qiao Lanxing was stunned for a moment, but he quickly understood what he meant. He was warning her not to sell him out if he was caught, or he would not be able to protect his sister, Qiao Lanlan. To be honest, he was only using Qiao Lanlan. If it weren't for her, the Qiao family wouldn't have fallen from grace and turned him into a stray dog. Just as he was in a daze, he heard footsteps coming from outside. He quickly headed down the tunnel and chased after the young master. Zhou Huaiming came in and was surprised to see the empty house. Search. There's an 80% chance of a tunnel in this house. But be careful. Yes. Everyone responded and immediately got to work, soon finding the entrance to the tunnel. Cover your face and bring a torch in, Zhou Huaiming cautioned. Remember to be careful. Afterwards, the person standing at the tunnel entrance immediately covered his face and rushed in with a torch, for more people went down after him. Seeing this, Zhou Huaiming walked to the bookcase and began to flip through the books, trying to see if there was anything of value left behind. He only found 5 accounting books, but many things were recorded in them. He could read the words on them as they weren't encrypted, and he immediately sent more people to raid the house. 2 of his men returned from the tunnel not long after, but they only had Qiao Lanxing in their hands. The other 3 continued after the young master. Zhou Huaiming stepped forward and grabbed Qiao Lanxing's chin to force him to look up. He smiled and said, "Oh, you were abandoned by Su Mingtang, the 7th heir of the Su family." Qiao Lanxing was shocked. He had never thought that Zhou Huaiming would know who his master was. However, the shock was only momentary and was quickly covered up. Unfortunately, Zhou Huaiming had been staring at him intently. He was used to interrogating all kinds of criminals, so Qiao Lansheng's surprise confirmed his guess. However, it was impossible to arrest him without sufficient evidence, so he asked again, "Tell me, where did he run off to, or does he have a place to stay?" "I don't know," Qiao Lansheng immediately replied. He really didn't know. He hadn't been with his master for a long time and had only just gained his young master's trust before the Qiao family's incident. Otherwise, the Qiao family wouldn't have ended up in such a state. "Are you sure?" "I don't think a weak scholar like you can withstand the infamous 18 tortures in prison." "I really don't know, then tell me what you know." Qiao Lansheng didn't reply and didn't pay him any more attention. There were so many of the young master's people here, and he didn't believe the young master would abandon him. "Take him away. Remember to interrogate him properly," Zhou Huaiming ordered. He continued searching the house. After confirming that there was no further evidence, he gave up. It seemed that this seventh young master was really cunning. Chapter 206. Arresting them. After another 15 minutes, the three men walked out and said, "General, we couldn't find that person's whereabouts." "Where does the tunnel lead to?" "It's a dry well about 1 mile away from the house." "Then expand the scope of the search." "That person is the seventh son of the Su family, Su Mingtang." "Understood." The three men responded and went out to look for him with more men. Meanwhile, Zhou Huaiming brought Qiao Lansheng back to his manor and locked him in the dungeon for interrogation. Unfortunately, Qiao Lansheng was quite stubborn and did not say anything. Finally, he had to employ the method discovered by Manager Liu. He applied some sugar to Qiao Lansheng's wound and threw him onto the grass. Sure enough, his wound was covered with ants after a short while, and he couldn't get rid of them no matter how he struggled. Qiao Lansheng tasted the real feeling of being bitten by 1,000 ants. A few times, he wanted to bite his tongue to commit suicide, but he couldn't as he was fed a muscle relaxant. Just as he felt like he was about to be tortured to death, Zhou Huaiming said, "If you want to confess, just nod or raise your legs." After he finished speaking, he turned around to leave. Qiao Lansheng immediately struggled even harder when he heard that. After a few attempts, he finally managed to lift his legs, which were tied together. Hearing his subordinate's reply, Zhou Huaiming turned his head and said, "Remember, I don't have time to waste with you here. You only have one chance, or you'll be eaten by ants bit by bit." He waved his hand at his subordinates after stating his ultimatum. A few of his men immediately took a towel and some chilly water and went forward to drive the ants away. They simply cleaned his wound after that. After Qiao Lansheng recovered, they began to interrogate him. However, what he knew was really limited. He gave out a few names. 3 of Su Mingtang's men were hidden among the guards. 1 was the advisor of the county mayor, and the rest were Qiao Lansheng's subordinates, including Constable Li. After Zhou Huaiming memorized the name list, he had mixed feelings. He had thoroughly reviewed these people before but couldn't find any problems. If Qiao Lansheng had not confessed today, finding these people would have taken a lot of effort. After that, he quickly sent people over to arrest those people. Otherwise, the real danger would befall County Mayor Kong. Sure enough, when his men arrived, the advisor was about to escape after kidnapping County Mayor Kong, but he was eventually caught. As for Su Mingtang, he wasn't found even after 5 days. Later, when Zhou Huaiming went down the tunnel, he found out that there was a secret room in the tunnel with some simple daily necessities. He then knew that Su Mingtang had probably escaped long ago. Of course, this was a story for the future. But after a night of hard work, Wang Quan, several other public figures, and all of Su Mingtang's people in the county were arrested. At the same time, Gu Qingrui and his wife didn't get to sleep that night either. Zhou Huaiming, who had promised to come over to get the blueprint, did not show up, nor did he come to the couple. They were afraid that something would happen to Zhou Huaiming, and they would be in danger. It was not until the following day, when Zhou Huaiming went to the restaurant for breakfast, that Zhou Ying finally heaved a sigh of relief. She made him a bowl of yang chun noodles and 2 poached eggs. After he finished eating, Zhou Ying asked, "Brother Zhou, are you all right?" "I'm fine. I was busy the whole night and didn't have time to get the drawings, so I am here to tell you that we'll go get them this evening." "That's good. There's no rush for the blueprint." "Well, you go ahead and continue your day. I have to go back and take a nap." After Zhou Huaiming finished speaking, he got up and stretched before walking out. Chapter 207. Giving up. After he left, Zhou Ying turned around and went to the kitchen. At noon, she told Gu Qingrui not to make any more house calls in the afternoon. In the evening, Zhou Huaiming came over with County Mayor Kong for a free meal. After the two were sure that Manager Liu would come to pick them up later, they rushed to the carriage that took them to the village. Of course, on the way there, the couple also found out that Qiao Lanqing and the others had been cleaned up. The couple immediately heaved a sigh of relief, as it was tiring to be on guard against them every day. When they reached home, Zhou Ying had prepared some snacks and tea while Gu Qingrui invited the village chief and the patriarch over. When the patriarch and the village chief learned from Gu Qingrui that Zhou Huaiming had come for the water wheels drawing, they were somewhat reluctant. After all, this was a way to make a fortune. Now that it had been cut off, they were not happy to accept it. However, they also knew this wasn't a good year, and many families in the country may not make it to the next. In order to save thousands of families, they could only bear the pain and part with their treasures. Maybe they could even get some reward for the village. They knelt when meeting Zhou Huaiming and County Mayor Kong without needing Gu Qingrui to introduce them. They had already met them when the restaurant opened. "We commoners, Qian Pinggui, Gu Qingji, greet General Zhou and Lord Kong. Do get up, all of you. Are you the village chief and the head of the Gu clan?" Zhou Huaiming asked. "Yes, I'm the village chief." The village chief took a step forward. "I, Gu Qingji, am the Gu clan's patriarch." The patriarch took a step forward. "Have a seat." Zhou Huaiming pointed at the 2 seats that Zhou Ying had prepared. "Thank you, General." The 2 saluted again before they walked over and sat down. Zhou Huaiming asked them how many days it would take to make a water wheel and finally said, "I think Brother Gu has already told you what I want to say. So let me know what you think." The patriarch and village chief immediately sang a high tune when they heard this. "This is a good thing for the country and the people. We fully support it. I won't say much then. The county will quickly promote water wheels, and you can continue making them, but the price must be lowered. The profit of each water wheel must not exceed 5 taels. As for the money you have received, the county will pay it back. You don't need to refund them." County Mayor Kong chimed in. "So, we're making water wheels for the county?" The village chief raised his head and asked the 2 officials. "Yes, except for your current orders, the rest will be distributed throughout the county." "Understood. What about the transportation?" "Since it's done by you, it's up to you to install it," Wang Yao continued. "So, you can make the arrangements. The county won't interfere." "Thank you, Lord Kong." The village chief heaved a sigh of relief. At least they could earn some money from the installation and transportation. After exchanging a few polite words, the group went to the workshop to get the blueprint. After Manager Liu and a few carpenters visited the water wheel, the group of people sent them out of the village. "Sigh, we've only sold 8 units so far. If I had known that this day would come so quickly, we would have made a few more overnight." Second Uncle Gu grumbled glumly. "You should be content that we can still continue to do this." The patriarch glared at him. "I think it's a good thing. This way, the grain production of the entire north will increase, and our days will improve. Gu Qingrui replied. That's true. Based on this year's situation, if it doesn't rain, there will definitely be a reduction in production. If water can be supplied, at least we can have some harvest. The village chief nodded in agreement. Chapter 208 Borrowing ice. No matter what the villagers presumed, the matter was settled. Although the profits were much lower, there was still work to do, so the villagers weren't too unhappy. In the end, Gu Qingrui told Father Gu and Second Uncle Gu about Qiao Lansheng's arrest. If they wanted to start a shipping business, they could start now. At least, no one would be targeting them. Zhou Ying took advantage of an opportunity while importing more soybeans and green beans over the next half-month. She took out 5,000 pounds of flour from her inner space and put them in the restaurant's warehouse. She also prepared 10,000 pounds of black, unrefined flour for the long-term workers in the manor and a boat of bran and tofu dregs for the cattle and sheep, which should be enough to feed them for half a year. At the same time, they planted sweet potatoes on 80% of the land around their house. In the future, if they wanted to promote the seeds, they would have a source. In the blink of an eye, it was the wheat harvest season. As expected, the wheat yield was reduced, but Zhou Ying didn't expect that 1 acre only produced about 70 pounds of wheat, and those without fertilizer only had enough to replant for the next season. This also made her deeply aware of the hard work of farmers. The price of food was considered cheap. After the wheat was harvested, the people continued to plant the autumn grain. The next step was to harvest the chili. Although the yield was much worse than expected, with 1 acre of land only producing 500 to 600 pounds, Zhou Ying collected them at the price of 5 coppers per pound. The income from 1 acre of land was equivalent to the income from 3 or 4 acres of wheat. So, someone ignored Zhou Ying's dissuasion and continued to plant nothing but chili. However, no matter what they planted, the following situation was not optimistic. Drought was everywhere because there had only been 1 rain after the new year. The water level in the river was also dropping quickly. If it weren't for the water wheel supporting them, no water could come in. When Zhou Ying saw this, she planted all the dry land with white sweet potatoes, and the edge of the field was full of chilies. Of course, she also left 10 acres of land for planting vegetables. At the same time, when the sweet potatoes and yams planted in the grassland were ripe, she dug up a large portion of them and put them in the warehouse. It was too hot today, and no one was in the restaurant during lunch. Zhou Ying made some ice with saltpeter and then put some clean, crushed ice in a piece of watermelon and half a cup of milk. She was eating it happily. Manager Lu rushed in and asked anxiously, "Miss Zhou, do you have any more ice?" After he finished speaking, he looked at the ice in her hand and was stunned for a moment. "What are you eating?" "I made my own ice dessert. Do you want a cup?" Zhou Ying asked after being surprised by his question. "Don't mind if I take one. The weather is so hot that I really want to dive into a pool." Manager Lu looked at the ice and finally couldn't help but nod. "Wait a moment, I'll make you another bowl." After Zhou Ying finished speaking, she went back to the kitchen. A moment later, she made a bowl and handed it to him. Manager Lu didn't hesitate and immediately picked up the spoon at the side. After taking a mouthful, he took a deep breath and said, "It's cool, from the inside out too. You really know how to enjoy a good meal." His shoulders relaxed, and he also remembered the purpose of coming here. He hurriedly asked, "By the way, do you have more ice here? Can you give me some? It's such a hot day, and the chicken I just slaughtered in the morning already tastes terrible in the afternoon." "No, the ice in the ice house can't be taken out, otherwise, the meat inside would be rotten too. But I can tell you how to create ice." "Create ice?" Manager Lu was stunned for a moment and looked at her with a surprised expression. Hurry up and eat up. I'll teach you after you're done. Zhou spoke as she lowered her head and began to eat. Otherwise, her iced dessert would melt. Manager Lu was curious, but he lowered his head and started eating. Chapter 209 New dishes. After the two of them finished eating the iced dessert, the heat in their body subsided. Zhou took him to the back, then took out pieces of saltpeter to experiment on the spot. It's best not to eat ice made of saltpeter. You'll have to use this ice to freeze clean water again. I understand. This is good stuff. Thank you so much. Manager Lu nodded excitedly. After that, he looked at the can of saltpeter in her hand with a burning gaze. Zhou smiled and handed it to him. This saltpeter can be used repeatedly until it can't make any more ice. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll go back to work then. After saying that, Manager Lu carried the small jar and walked out. Seeing this, Zhou took out another jar from the warehouse and put it in the kitchen. At this moment, Xiaoqing had just returned from strolling outside. Mistress, we can't go on like this. There are no customers at all at noon, so I think we should add some new dishes. Can't you guys rest more? You'll be busy grilling skewers once dinner time comes. Besides, it's so hot in the afternoon that not many people will come out to eat. But I'm too free in the afternoon. Xiaoqing said, shaking his head. I'll think of something. Zhou nodded thoughtfully. She left for a stroll on the main street. To be honest, there were few people, and they were passing by in a hurry. With this flow of people, nothing would attract them, even if they had new dishes. She thought of ice products, and it seemed like she could prepare some. Even if she couldn't sell them, they wouldn't lose much, but they would profit otherwise. There were also chilled dishes such as cold noodles, chilled cake, and jelly. Customers might come in for a snack, and there was no need for stir-fried dishes. Thus, she called over her staff, and everyone got busy together. Of course, Zhou only fried the chili oil, and others made the rest. When they were done, they each had a bowl. After they finished eating, Zhou asked, "How does it taste? Can it sell?" "Yes, the sour and spicy taste is appetizing and filling." Chen Yang nodded. "Indeed, if we sell this at the pier, it will sell out quickly." Tian Zhuang agreed. "Then let's launch the cold noodles and chilled jelly first. We'll promote it in the evening and see the response. As for the pier, let's not get involved. We just need to sell in our own territory." After she saw that it was almost time for dinner, she brought out a bowl of cold noodles. "You guys eat while we'll send some over to the clinic." Afterwards, she prepared some takeout and took them to the clinic. When she arrived at the clinic, she found Dr. Luo and Gu Qingrui reading a book each. There were a few apprentices grinding medicine, and the business was quite bleak. "Everyone, it's time to eat. Let's have dinner." "Oh, you are here. What delicious food did you bring us?" Dr. Luo immediately put down his book and walked over when he saw her. "Cold noodles. Babe, you really know me too well. I was just thinking about this." Gu Shengru's eyes lit up when he saw the contents of the takeouts. A few of the apprentices immediately looked over when they heard this. Gu Qingxi ran over and asked, "Sister-in-law, is this a new way to eat noodles?" "Kinda. Hurry up, wash your hands, and take the chopsticks and bowls while at it. It won't be good if it gets warm." Zhou put the takeout on the table and said, "Don't mind if we do." Dr. Luo said, and he was the first to run to the back. The others immediately followed. Chapter 210 Drought worsening. After the meal, Dr. Luo asked, "Zhou, do you sell these cold noodles?" We might order them for lunch as it will save us the trouble of cooking. I haven't decided yet, but I'll try to sell it in the next few days. That's lovely. We will order them as long as you sell them. The weather is so hot that people don't have any appetite, so the number of people having stomach problems is rapidly increasing. Stomach problems. Food poisoning. Some had stomachaches after eating spoiled food, some had gastric problems, and some even had heat stroke. In short, this heat is killing them. Indeed, we must avoid the summer heat, it's so stuffy and hot. When Zhou said this, she thought of green bean soup. It seemed that she had to prepare some every day. When the cold noodles and chilled jelly were launched at night, it was immediately a hit, especially with passers-by. Eating it with a few lamb skewers and the like was comfortable. Starting the next day, Zhou asked Zhao Qing to prepare a large pot of green bean soup daily, offering it for free. At the same time, they also introduced iced desserts. The business in the afternoon was getting much better, but most of their business came from the surrounding shops, mainly selling cold noodles and desserts. Only those in a better financial state would order a stir-fried dish or two. As for the iced desserts, the customers were mainly women and children. It wasn't selling like hotcakes, but the profit was decent. Another half a month passed, and the water wheel could no longer deliver water. The crops in the fields died, and the price of food rose. The morale of the people died along with the crops. Especially the families in town who did not have any food in stock, some of them could not even afford to eat. That night, Zhou saw Gu Qingrui come to pick her up. Just as she was about to leave, she was stopped by Qiu Yu, the oldest child beggar in their group. Manager Zhou, can I talk to you about something? Oh, what's the matter? Zhou asked curiously. Although these little child beggars helped out in the restaurant, they often looked for Fang Qing or Sun Hongliang. They had never looked for her, so it must be a big problem this time. Can we eat in the restaurant instead of getting paid? Because of the grain price. That's half the reason. The other reason is that recently, people have been stealing or snatching our food. We can't protect ourselves, so we thought of eating in the restaurant before going home. Stealing and snatching. Yes, the slums in the West are chaotic. Although we have a lot of people, I'm the oldest and am only 12. Zhou hesitated for a moment before replying, why don't you all just move into our restaurant? It's hot now, so why not sleep here? Really? We can move in here. Of course, but you must pay attention to hygiene. You must bathe every day. Zhou stated firmly. Of course, she could speak confidently because there was a deep well in the restaurant's courtyard. The water level had remained relatively high even after such a long time. Don't worry, Manager Zhou. I'll keep an eye on them. Alright, I'll leave this matter to you. After that, Zhou got on the carriage and went back. At night, after the two entered her interspace, Zhou asked, Rui, what do you say we take in those child beggars? You want to take them all under our wing? Gu Qingrui was stunned for a moment. Yes, no matter what we do in the future, we must have someone under us, right? Now that they're in trouble, it's a good time to win them over. That's true. I'll ask them later. If they agree, we'll teach them. Chapter 211 Inquiry. The next morning, the couple came to town in a carriage. When they passed by the middle of the village, they smelled a strong aroma of food. They happened to meet Mrs. Bai, who was also smiling. Gu Qingrui couldn't help but ask curiously, Aunt Joshi, is there any good news in the village? Oh, Qingrui. Today is Chunhong's wedding. A groom is marrying into Widow Hua's family. We're all going to join the festival. Mrs. Bai paused for a moment before she smiled and replied. Marrying into? Yes, this year's year isn't good, and many families have too many children. They will marry off their children if they can't afford to raise them. At least they will survive, right? So that's how it is. Which village is the groom from? I heard he's from a town, but I don't know the details. Gu Qingrui nodded. Then you go ahead. We'll be going to town. After speaking, he whipped, and the horse carriage rushed to town. Qingrui, when you come back, remember to bring me some herbs for herbal tea, Mrs. Bai called out after remembering something. All right. Gu Qingrui turned around and replied, continuing to drive the carriage. Zhou Ying, who was in the carriage, heard the news too. She didn't expect that the always proud and arrogant Chen Hong would choose to get someone to marry into their family, but she didn't think about it anymore after a moment. When they arrived in town, Gu Qingrui saw that the little child beggars had already moved into the restaurant. He looked for Qiu Yu, who was the oldest, and asked, Qiu Yu, do you have any plans for the future? I don't understand what you mean. Qiu Yu asked, confused. It's about what you want to do in the future. You can't be a shop assistant for the rest of your life, right? Qiu Yu shook his head. We just want to eat and have a piece of cloth over us. We haven't thought about anything else, and that can wait until we grow up. Won't it be too late then? At your age, you should be learning a craft. It'll be a pity if you miss it. But I can't read, write, or draw. Qiu Yu scratched his head and replied. What if we're willing to teach you? Qiu Yu was dazed. He looked up at him in disbelief. Boss, what do you mean? You also know that our restaurant's business is doing well. We'll open more branch stores and other businesses in the future. So, we want to train a group of people who are loyal to us. I see that you have no one to rely on. So, what do you think? Qiu Yu's eyes brightened up, and he replied, Can I learn to cook? Naturally, that's great. Then, I can make whatever I want to eat. Go to the kitchen, help out when you're free, and see who you click better with. It'll be best if you can find someone who takes a liking to you. I understand. Thank you, boss. Qiu Yu immediately kneeled and kowtowed. It all depends on your talent. There are just some who are born bad at cooking. Gu Qingrui helped him up. Yes, I will work hard. Ask your brothers and sisters later to see what they think. Let me know when I get back. All right, leave this to me. Gu Qingrui smiled and patted his small shoulder. He turned around and walked out after that. Once he left, the news quickly spread in the small restaurant. Sun Hongliang and the others naturally knew about it. Fang Qing immediately went to Qiu Yu and asked, Did the owner ask you to sign a contract? No, he didn't. Qiu Yu shook his head. I see. Fang Qing's eyes flashed with a thoughtful expression. Brother Fang, what's wrong? Qiu Yu asked nervously, You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.